On a kitchen table, a split meteorite sits under phone light. In the fracture, a black, glassy thread shifts by millimeters. Slow, deliberate, impossible to ignore. No music, no claims. Just a lens, a stone, and movement that looks less like drip and more like intent. Millions replay the same seconds, arguing ooze versus reach, illusion versus evidence. Tonight we build a clean record: what the camera shows, what the public thinks it sees, and why tiny changes matter. Watch the edge, listen to the silence. Keep your mind open and your notes honest. Before theories, before conclusions, we start at frame 1 and follow the footage calmly, step by step. If this lived in your house, sealed, shifting, unexplained, what would you do? Keep it, release it, or end it? Do not answer yet. First, the origin, the moment a stone opened and something black moved. Then, the timeline that turned a quiet upload into a global fixation. Now begin Chapter 1T. The viral discovery. It began as a quiet update from a small account, a short video of a palm-sized meteorite, its surface charred and cratered, set on a kitchen table. The uploader was Kin. The caption was simple: no grand claims, just the place he found it and the date. What turned a curiosity into a phenomenon came seconds later: a close-up cut revealing a black, glossy substance threaded through a fracture in the stone, shifting along the edge as if pulled by an unseen current. Kin posted again that night. An angle change, a little more light, the camera steadier. Viewers could see the stuff holding its shape, then stretching in a thin strand before retracting. He said nothing speculative, only that he had never seen anything like it. The restraint worked. Within hours, the clip rode the algorithm, stitched by Science TikTok, mirrored to YouTube Shorts, and extracted frame by frame on X. News-style accounts grabbed stills and circled the same detail, a delicate, branching motion at the fracture line that did not look like dust or moisture. The first wave of attention came from the visuals: no drama, no edits beyond jump cuts, just handheld footage that felt impossible to fake at that speed and in that lighting. The second wave came from the context. This was not a university lab or a museum bench, it was a private home, ordinary surfaces and ordinary light. The mismatch, mundane setting, extraordinary image, pulled people in. Was the black material oozing, flowing, or responding? Kin's early posts were practical. He showed the meteorite next to a coin for scale. He filmed it from left and right, with and without a phone flashlight. He marked the time in the corner of the screen and let the camera run. No music, no voiceover. That choice created a documentary calm. Viewers could focus on the object and make up their own minds. Hashtags multiplied: meteorite, space rock, black substance, unexplained. As shares climbed into the millions, creators with microscopy rigs and materials backgrounds stitched his footage and slowed it to 1/4 speed. They argued about surface tension, magnetism, and non-Newtonian behavior. Others compiled comparative clips: oil films, ferrofluid, pitch drop, placing Kin's frames beside each reference. None matched cleanly. The comments filled with the same sentence written 100 ways: it looks alive. The timing of the uploads helped. Each post landed at a regular hour, separated by just enough time for speculation to build. Kin stuck to a minimal script: show, label, timestamp, then logged off. That rhythm made the next clip feel like an event. Community translations appeared, subtitles in Spanish, Arabic, and Indonesian widened the arc. Geotag think pieces spun up, but the backbone remained the footage itself. Why did people care? The footage offered intimacy without theatrics. You were close to the edge of the stone, close enough to see light crease across the black surface, close enough to notice when a thread extended, paused, and relaxed. It looked neither chaotic nor passive. It looked attentive. The camera never flinched, and that steadiness made small movements feel enormous. The first long compilation stitched Kin's earliest clips into a single timeline overlay. That video crossed 1 million views by morning. Commenters began cataloging frames: Teep Sorozen Wealth, faint elongation, Teep Sorodine 27, branching, Teetsa 0103, retraction. A volunteer spreadsheet tracked mirrors and backups in case original uploads were deleted. Science channels promised breakdowns, documentary channels promised context. General audiences, though, were satisfied with the simplest proposition. Watch the edge. Micro-engagement moment. What did you notice in the first clip? An ooze or a reach? Viewers argued the difference as if it changed everything. Some said the material pooled like resin. Others insisted it chose a direction. By the end of the first week, Kin's handle had become shorthand for the entire story. Media rundowns introduced it with one sentence, "The Black Substance Video," and moved on, trusting everyone already knew the reference. The number that mattered was not just views, it was watch time. People stayed through the quiet parts, waiting for the next subtle shift. They leaned forward at the same seconds, replayed the same 3 frames, posted the same freeze, thawed GIFs. Millions were watching not for spectacle, but for proof they could inspect with their own eyes. The origin was now fixed in public memory, a found meteorite, a fracture line, a black, seemingly living material shown without commentary. It was the cleanest possible start to a story that could have gone anywhere. And as Kin prepared his next update, the audience sensed that the calm, observational phase was ending, that whatever came next would change how the footage was interpreted from that point on. The 24-hour decision. Kin broke the rhythm of quiet observation with one short post. No music, no edits, only a tight frame, his hand on the safe, and a single line delivered in a flat voice: "Tomorrow, I will end it." He did not explain how. He did not explain why. He looked into the lens for a second longer than usual, then the clip cut to black. The caption gave a date and nothing else. The effect was instant. Within minutes, the comment feed split into 2 clear sides. One side asked him to stop, to wait, to pass the material to experts. They wrote that this could be the first solid sign of non-human biology or a new class of matter. They argued that once destroyed, the chance to learn would be gone forever. Preserve the sample, they said. Document, store, and study. Do not erase what we do not yet understand. The other side focused on risk. They said the footage already showed enough to justify caution. They argued that uncertainty is not neutral when the stakes are unknown. In their view, the safest decision was to end the threat before it could grow, change, or move beyond the container. It is not a museum piece, they wrote. It is a risk. End it. News-style accounts amplified both positions. Headlines used the same 3 words, "Destroy it tomorrow," and embedded the post at the top. Long threads formed around a simple question: is curiosity a duty or is safety a duty? Scientists and science communicators tried to cool the language. They urged patience and process. Commenters with a practical tone replied that process takes time and that Kin must decide now, not later. A small group tried to build a middle path. Keep the material intact but isolate it more securely. Keep recording, but under supervision. Press pause rather than stop. Their messages read like emergency procedures written in a hurry. Yet even those careful notes ended with the same sentence: "What cannot lose this record?" Kin did not post a follow-up. He did not enter the comment thread. The absence added fuel. Viewers replayed the last 2 seconds, measuring his tone, his posture, the way his fingers rested on the edge of the frame. They read intention into silence. By the end of the hour, polls appeared across platforms. Approaches and pressure. The observational phase ended when people began to find Kin in real life. He said it simply: strangers had approached him, asked questions, and left contact cards. Some were friendly and curious. Others were brief and businesslike. A few said he should hand the object over and stop posting. None appeared in his footage. He described the encounters without names, uniforms, or affiliations. According to Kin, one group made offers. A buyer claimed to represent a collector of rare falls. Another said a private lab could take the burden and pay for it. The terms sounded immediate: cash on pickup, no delays. A second group delivered warnings. They said the object was unsafe in a home, that he could be liable if anything happened, and that he should transfer it to professionals. Followers read these contacts as pressure. Some saw practical concern. Others saw an attempt to take control of the story. The timing mattered to them. the messages arrived after the videos drew global attention. That sequence looked to many like suppression by polite means. No threats, just a narrowing set of choices: sell, surrender, or stop. Kin's language stayed careful. He did not accuse anyone of wrongdoing. He posted that he would not meet unknown parties alone and would not give away the object without a clear chain of custody. He confirmed one step. He moved the container to a different location for his safety. He did not show where or say who helped. He only said he wanted distance between the object and his daily routine. The audience reaction split along a familiar line: trust versus caution. Viewers who favored open science urged him to seek accredited researchers and to document every hand that touched the container. Viewers who favored control told him to limit communication and keep his whereabouts private. Groups watched his phrasing, trying to tell whether he felt protected or cornered. Commentary channels turned encounters into a timeline. They noted messages that asked him to stop posting for now, words that sounded, to some, like a lid placed on the story. They clipped sentences that hinted at consequences if he refused. That is where the phrase, "powerful forces," began to circulate, not as a proven claim, but as a label for the sense that someone preferred fewer eyes on the footage. Kin kept his updates brief and documented only what he could verify: a knock at the door, a card on a table, a text that asked for a call. He flagged the rest as secondhand or uncertain. That line, verified versus reported, became the format of his posts and the lens the audience used to judge new claims. As attention widened, another concern surfaced among viewers, separate from ownership or custody. If the object left his control by sale or transfer, what would that mean for the surroundings? The next debate formed on that edge, where private decisions meet public consequences and where movement could matter beyond one room. Release rumors and eco-risk. A new thread appeared across platforms with a single claim: Kin might release the substance. No post from him said this outright, but the idea spread quickly through captions, thumbnails, and stitched speculation. In comments, the wording shifted from "what if" to "he could," and then, in some corners, to "he will." The rumor became a talking point on its own, unconfirmed, unattributed, but sticky. Public reaction turned from fascination to worry. Viewers who had watched the early clips frame by frame began imagining what release could mean if the material behaved outside a container the way it seemed to behave inside. The most common fear was uncontrolled spread. People pictured a small leak becoming many small leaks, each moving in ways no one could predict or measure in time. Rivers came up first. Commenters asked what would happen if the substance reached flowing water. Would it disperse into harmless fragments, or follow currents and settle in slow eddies, touching plants, insects, fish? None of this was established. It was a chain of questions, not evidence. But the picture was vivid enough that local waterways entered the conversation as fragile thresholds rather than scenery. Forests followed. Threads mapped a scenario where a release near soil and leaf litter might create countless contact points. Users talked about root mats, fungi networks, and decaying wood as complex systems that could carry, trap, or transform a foreign material. Again, these were public concerns, not findings, but the logic reflected a basic ecological truth. Once something enters a living web, tracking it is hard. Cities were the third worry. People imagined drains, basements, subway gaps, and the tight spaces behind walls. In that model, a release would not look dramatic. It would look quiet. Small movements through infrastructure, unnoticed until someone connected separate incidents. The point was not certainty. It was uncertainty in a dense environment where the line between private action and public exposure is thin. A minority pushed back, arguing that speculation should not outrun data. They noted that no tests had shown how the material interacts with air, water, or organics outside controlled views. Without those tests, they said, every scenario was a story, not a conclusion. Others replied that ecological risk is often managed by precaution first, proof later. Both sides agreed on one thing: The cost of being wrong could be paid by more than one person. As the rumor cycled, posts shifted from "what might happen" to "what responsibility looks like when outcomes are unknown." That question did not need confirmation or denial to matter. It asked something larger than a single object or a single room. Are we ready, not as individuals but as a public, to handle the unknown without breaking what surrounds us? Humanity vs. the unknown. The world does not often see discovery begin at a kitchen table. People are used to breakthroughs arriving with logos, press briefings, and teams. Here, the first witness is one person. That is what unsettles so many viewers. They are not just watching a story, they are watching a burden being carried in public. In comments and forums, the tone shifted from excitement to self-examination. People asked what responsibility looks like when there is no handbook. They admitted how quickly instinct splits, curiosity pulls forward, caution pulls back. Some wrote that human progress starts with a single observer. Others replied that wisdom begins with the limits of one pair of hands. Kin's situation pressed a quiet truth into view. Institutions are not only about authority, they are about shared weight. When a lone individual documents something unusual, the weight does not vanish. It spreads into the audience. Each viewer feels a small part of it and wonders what they would do if the choice were theirs. That is why the public reaction sounds different from normal internet talk. The usual jokes thin out. The language grows plain. People try to name their fears without drama. They speak about duty in simple terms: protect what is around you, protect what might be new. Those aims do not always line up. The space between them becomes the test. There is also the question of trust. Not trust in a person's goodness, but trust in our collective process. Can a crowd help without crowding? Can advice travel faster than noise? Can a global audience hold attention long enough to think instead of react? Viewers are learning in real time what it means to be a public around an unknown. Many notice how easy it is to slide from a frame on a screen to a story in the mind. A single image asks to be completed. People caution each other to separate what is seen from what is supposed. That discipline is not cold, it is care. It keeps the door open for learning without closing the door on safety. Another theme rises again and again: patience. Not the passive kind, but the active patience of deliberate steps, clear records, and quiet checks. It is the patience of counting to 10 before naming a thing, of saying, "We do not know," as a full sentence, not a failure. What the audience is practicing, without quite saying it, is a civic skill: to share uncertainty, to hold it together, to wait for the next verified piece, even when the imagination is faster. Discovery is rarely only about what is found. It is about the kind of people we become while we face it. Inside the safe, the camera opens on a metal safe, matte surface, keypad in frame. The door is already unlocked. Kin lifts the lid a few centimeters and holds it there so light can enter. Inside, the container is simple: a clear inner box with sealed seams and a flat base. No labels, no tools, just the object and the space around it. The black material sits in a shallow crescent along a fracture of stone. In the first seconds it looks still. Then a thin edge elongates, no more than a few millimeters, and settles. Hair freeze frame. The line appears slightly glossier than the rest, as if a film has drawn itself forward and paused. When the clip resumes, the same edge relaxes back toward the curve it had before. Across several posts, the motion repeats with small variations. A slender thread forms, narrows, and retracts. A second thread begins from a nearby point, then stops midway, leaving the surface fractionally thicker where it began. Zoom. You can see a branching pattern that resembles a forked vein. Whether it is flowing, climbing, or simply redistributing is not established. The footage shows change of shape, not motive. Lighting shifts between clips, but the pattern remains: slow extension, brief hold, return. Dust does not blow, there is no visible condensation. The inner walls of the container are clean, and there is no stain left where movement occurred. Viewers sometimes describe the motion as exploratory. That is interpretation. What the camera certifies is periodic elongation along the fracture line and localized thickening where a new strand begins. In one sequence, Kin sets the phone on a small stand so hands are not involved. The frame is fixed. Over 40 seconds, a fine filament pulls away from the main mass and bends toward the inner wall, stopping 2 or 3 millimeters short of contact. It retracts on nearly the same path, leaving the surface slightly smoother than before. Our freeze frame. The distance to the wall is unchanged at the end. Kin also writes, in a caption accompanying one clip, that when he stands close to the safe, he feels a low vibration in the floor, like a faint hum. The sound is not captured by the phone. There is no audible tone on playback. This detail remains his claim, tied to his proximity and sensation, not to audio recorded on the device. The container itself behaves predictably. No fogging, no deformation, no visible reaction at the seams. A strip of tape marks the baseline position of the stone. It does not move between posts. On-screen notes show time stamps, but there is no visible clock in frame. The atmosphere in the room appears ordinary, steady light, no airflow cues. Some viewers report seeing tiny search movements at the margin, pointing to frames where a tip seems to hesitate before choosing left or right. Others argue the behavior is consistent with a viscous film seeking lower tension. Both readings remain readings. The verified facts are visual. A black substance changes shape in small increments inside a clear container with recurrent elongation and retraction and no residue left behind. The final shot returns to the safe itself. The lid lowers, latch clicks, keypad lights dim. No further description is added. What is known from sight stays on the record. What is felt, like the reported hum, is labeled as Kin's observation only. The method by which anything might be altered or ended is not shown, named, or implied. Hazmat sightings and cover-up narrative. The timeline took a sharp turn when posts began circulating of people in hazmat-style suits near streets said to be close to where Kin had filmed. The clips were short, angles uncertain, faces obscured. Captions did most of the work. Team on the ground. Collection in progress. None of the accounts provided official confirmation. In replies, users marked them as reports claims and asked for originals, time stamps, and source devices. Some footage was mirrored across platforms with minor edits, making provenance harder to trace. Alongside these posts came threads claiming that vehicles seen in the background, vans and utility trucks, were later tracked to a restricted area outside a Panamanian city. The tracking itself rested on open-source breadcrumbs, partial plates, roadside signage, and map matches. Viewers built composite routes from stills and said the pattern pointed to institutional custody. Others pushed back, noting that similar fleets serve routine industrial sites. The assertion stayed in the realm of speculation, suggestive, not verified. This was the moment, for many followers, when the story shifted from a personal record to a contest of control. The vocabulary changed. Chain of custody, evidence integrity, jurisdiction. Documentary-minded accounts argued for maximum transparency. Publish raw files, preserve metadata, mirror everything in multiple places. Cautious voices argued for quiet coordination, saying that escalation by publicity can invite unmanaged outcomes. The tension was not just about who held the object. It was about who would decide what the public gets to know. Kin's updates reflected that stress. Without detailing routes or helpers, he signaled a further relocation of the container and reiterated that he was documenting what he could verify while withholding specifics that might expose a location. To some, that prudence looked like responsibility. To others, it looked like a narrowing window, evidence moving off the open stage. Audiences read this sequence against historical anecdotes they already believed unusual finds that, in their telling, are collected and fade from view. Whether those stories are accurate or apocryphal, they supply a template. Once protective suits appear in a feed and vehicles are said to head for fenced facilities. A familiar expectation takes hold. The public phase is ending. From there, the community split along a line that had little to do with loyalty and everything to do with method. One side insisted that radical visibility, mirrors, live posts, redundant archives, was the only guard against disappearance. The other side argued that procedural handling, logs, custody forms, documented transfers, was the only path to credible study. Both claimed the same motive: keep the record intact. No agency stepped forward with an on-the-record statement to settle the footage or the routes. In that absence, the narrative bent toward institutional control by default. The sight of suits, the talk of restricted zones, and the deliberate vagueness of locations produced a shared feeling: the open window is there, but smaller, and closing requires no announcement. Atlas connection: a parallel conversation formed around a single astronomical name, Atlas. Posters claimed that Atlas was entering the inner solar system, and some began to suggest a timing link to the fall reported in Panama. From there, a set of speculative theories grew. None of them are confirmed. All of them should be read as proposals, not findings. The first theory is fragment linkage. In this view, material associated with Atlas could shed small pieces as it moves inward. A fragment might then descend on a separate path and land far from any telescope's focus. Supporters say the calendar overlap alone makes the idea worth asking about. Critics reply that same season is not same source, and that many small bodies cross near Earth with similar timelines. The second theory is seeding, framed by enthusiasts as intentional delivery. The claim is that an object related to Atlas could carry specialized material and deposit it deliberately, like a courier. This is the most ambitious reading and also the most vulnerable to ordinary explanations. It assumes agency where none has been demonstrated. The third theory is precursor, which sits between the other two. It suggests that what fell could be a forerunner, not a fragment of Atlas itself, but an object that precedes it, hinting at a larger flow of material on a similar track. In this model, Panama is context, not source. A more conservative alternative is coincidence. Space is busy, cataloged bodies and uncatalogued debris crisscross predictable lanes. Under this view, two things can happen near the same time without being related. It asks for direct measurements, composition, trajectory, orbital elements, before drawing lines between sky and ground. What all sides share is a desire for hard constraints. To move beyond posters, maps, and timelines, they ask for spectrographic data on Atlas, recovery and analysis of any local material, and an overlap that survives math. Until then, the Atlas link remains an open question. It gives people a larger stage to imagine, but it does not replace the basic rule that evidence must connect the dots, not the other way around.